afternoon. Welcome to TSNN's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar will cover technology trends you need to know about. Please submit questions for the speakers by typing your questions into the Ask a Question box at the bottom of the media player and hitting Submit. They will be addressed in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar. Alternately, you can join the conversation and ask questions on Twitter, #TSNN. Now, Ms. Arlene Shows, Marketing Manager for TSNN, would like to say a few words and introduce our sponsors today.
Welcome, everyone. TSNN is proud to continuously offer valuable content on a monthly basis to our subscribers during our complimentary webinar series. However, we could not do it alone. Therefore, we would like to thank our sponsors, one of which is OnStream Media, who is credited with delivering the first video webcast and streaming presentations over the Internet in 1993. Nearly 20 years later, the company has grown to now deliver over 8,000 live events per year for over 75% of the Fortune 100 and nearly 50% of Fortune 1000 companies. The company's latest innovation is Marketplace 365, a leading virtual event and online community platform that is specifically designed for today's trade show organizers, publishers, associations, and enterprise clients. All of us at TSNN hope you enjoy this educational session. Feel free to stay after the webinar ends to explore the marketplace. And now, allow me to introduce you to Rob Hamlin, President and CEO of MarketArt, creators of the You Are Here tool. Rob, over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Arlene. And thanks, everybody, for being on today. We're really pleased to be a sponsor of this webinar. It's obviously a great topic, and this one's very close to us. Again, my name is Rob Hamlin. My company's name is MarketArt. You may know us for the You Are Here system that we build. It's event management, audience engagement. And as a technology provider in the market, we're just keenly focused on new trends and how to bring those technologies to bear in ways that truly help event managers enhance attendee experience, drive value to exhibitors, and overall produce better events. So learning about technology is extremely important today. And today we are going to hear from a leader in the industry who is a real authority on this technology, Michelle Bruno. Michelle, as you may know, is president of Bruno Signature Events. It's a content strategy firm based in Salt Lake City. And Michelle sort of modestly describes herself as, I'm going to read this out, someone who comes from the event industry and understands the trade show and conference ecosystem with a mission to chronicle the changes, innovation, technology, and digital evolution that is impacting the industry so profoundly. Now, maybe you've had a chance to see some of her work. She does an awful lot of writing and blogging, especially for TSNN. She's also published over 150 articles and white papers on this topic, meeting and exhibition logistics, marketing, technology for the industry. Does a lot of work with CEIR as well, the Center for Exhibition Industry Research. She's also a blogger. She blogs about social media, technology, innovation in the events industry, and you can read her blog at forkintheroadblog.com. So, with that, let me introduce your host and today's speaker. Thanks again. Here's Michelle Bruno.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that fabulous introduction, especially coming from you. I had the opportunity to meet Rob about 2 weeks ago and take a look at the kiosks, the wayfinding kiosks that MarketArt is offering. And trade shows have definitely come a long way from brochure carousels and folks wandering around with printed floor plans and highlighters and kind of doing everything the old-fashioned way. So I'm really pleased to have been able I'm pleased to be able to witness that sort of transformation in our industry. Thanks also, Rachel Wimberly, for inviting me to do this webinar, and Arlene Shows, who you heard from earlier, for wrangling our whole team together today. So I'm going to talk about trade show technology, trends that you need to know about, and really trade show technology is such a huge topic, but it's also an oxymoron. We in the trade show industry love shiny objects as much as the next guy, but we also fight them. We're afraid to change anything that's worked really well for 50 years, and the entire industry is built on this notion that there is value in human interaction. So the face-to-face quality of trade shows it sort of runs counter to that because we're talking about placing technology, the computers, the Internet, mobile devices between us and our customers. And it's like, to some people, like prying the customer from our cold, dead hands. It's uncomfortable. It's counterintuitive. It's really scary. But here's the problem. productive. They have options for making contact and getting information from somewhere else besides the trade show floor. They're using technology at home and in the office, and in many cases, technology is the way that they understand what they need to know, and we need to give it to them. So to sort of break it down, I'm going to be talking about three key areas. I think that most of what we end up doing in trade shows is informed by larger technology trends outside of our industry. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the trade show industry has really invented any mainstream technology. Maybe registration tools, which eventually led to, the e-bites that we use for parties and our personal gatherings. But, we didn't invent mobile apps. We really have not been super huge pioneers in general for technology. So most of what we see in technology is really mainstream technology that we've adapted for the trade show industry. So when I look at innovation, I look for broad discussions on topics outside the realm of trade shows, first to see what might be coming our way, and I think there are several things that have relevance for us. Three of them are this discussion of big data, analyzing huge data sets. Second of all, I'm really intrigued by the possibility of social discovery. So it's hooking up with strangers using your mobile phone. And third, I think that social collaboration using Internet-based platforms to solve problems is, again, a very interesting direction that the business world is taking outside of the trade show industry and something that we need to look at. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about the three micro trends that are more or less exclusive to our industry right now. These are the three areas that we're really excited, where there's a lot of discussions, obviously mobile apps, mobile devices. The second is social media. That has been ongoing for the past 2-3 years, and finally virtual platforms, which are finally getting their due, and there are trends within these three trends that we'll be talking about. And then finally, I want to start the discussion about how we can begin to wrap our heads around technology selection, and I have sort of step number one about mapping objectives and pains of our organizations to the particular types of technology that might solve those pains. So again, you can tweet about this session at #TSNN, and if you want to reference me, my Twitter handle is Michelle Bruno, at Michelle Bruno. So let's talk about this first big macro trend. And if there's anyone that we can look to besides Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook or the guys at Google, but the folks at LinkedIn are masters of managing large sets of data. And really, all those platforms really are, at the end of the day, are huge data collection sites. So I really liked this quote from the guy from LinkedIn, that one of the most exciting parts about his platform is that the ecosystem that they've created gets more members, they become more engaged, they collect more data, and then they use that data. They examine all the different data points to create more relevant experiences for their members and create a better return on investment. So collecting the data helps them create products. It helps them grow their communities, and that sort of then leads to begetting more members, which then gets more data. So it's sort of this self-fulfilling plan. And I think the idea of big data is extremely relevant to trade show organizers because we have mountains of data. We have surveys. We have registration, records. We have conference evaluations. And now with newer technology, we have social media. We have the mobile analytics. We have the data that comes from RFID. We have lead data that we can be exposed to. We have event management platform downloads to look at to see who's accessing what content and when. And if there's one thing that trade show organizers can own and monetize, it's data. They can't own their customers. They can't own the marketplace anymore. They can't own the content, but they can own the data and use it to create better products. points, you can look at LinkedIn and predict how the users are going to use it. And we as organizers can look at our data sets and almost predict how and when attendees, exhibitors, sponsors are going to engage our events, how they're going to experience them, and it's hugely useful. Data can be used to create personalized and customized experiences for all of our stakeholders, including media, including analysts, not just exhibitor sponsors and attendees. And there are ways to collect transactional and behavioral data now. So I think it's a huge topic that we should be paying attention to. So let's start with READ. It's not that these are concepts that are really out there and no one in our industry is paying any attention to them now. I recently read about READ Exhibition's new pricing initiative, and I really felt that illustrated the value of data. So what READ did was take data from their shows, and they realized by looking at the data, the transactional data, the behavioral data, they realized that their pricing model for booth space was highly flawed. It really made sense to them that customers should have a choice on what booths they select, when they select them, what attributes the booth should have, the pricing of the booths. It's hard to say attributes in booths. And by looking at that data and the customer insight, they developed an entirely new pricing model, which allowed those that have the budgets and want to have the better booths in the better locations, no matter what kinds of booths they are, should be able to select those booths when they're ready to buy. They also found out that exhibitors, maybe the smaller, new-to-market folks that are a little more price-conscious, would accept less amenities, maybe booths that are in less popular locations in exchange for a lower price, sort of the Southwest Airlines mentality. You're willing to not have a reserved seat, and you can line up, in the lines that you have to line up according to your ABC category in order to be able to select a lower-priced option. So they developed this new sales strategy based on value instead of volume, and they allowed customer value choices to drive the booth selection in the sales process, and the end result was that they actually improved profit. So this is sort of what that pattern looked like. At the very bottom of the arrow, they took their customer understanding, they took their data sets, they looked at what was happening with their customers. They developed a new process for booth selection. They improved the product development. That new process enhanced customer value, and it led to improved revenue opportunities. And at the bottom there, I have that URL, which is the PowerPoint that Nancy Walsh used to present the entire case study at the ECEF forum, and it's really fantastic. So I urge anyone to go to that link and look at the PowerPoint itself to see how they arrived at the information, how they used the data, what their end results were, and it also kind of talks about how they've been using social media, so it's really, really interesting. READ isn't the only one looking at data points. I had the opportunity to meet April Wilson a couple of weeks ago from Hanley Wood, and we were kind of sitting together and chatting. She is the director of Tradeshow marketing for Hanley Wood. We started talking about what she's doing at Hanley Wood with their mountains of data, and she shared a couple of things with me. What's interesting about April is she comes from the newspaper and financial industries, so it immediately piqued my interest, because if there are any industries that should have been looking at data when the data was available to predict what would have happened later on, it's those. So Hanley Wood was lucky enough to snag her from those industries, and she's currently applying her skills to the what I call an often incestuous trade show industry. And here's a couple of things that they are doing. So she's looking at, I believe it's 5 years' worth of databases. She's looking at the registration data, a lot from companies that are doing measurement, that a lot of times attendees will sign up for a session, but they don't actually go. Or they'll select some content, but they don't actually download it. So there's a huge disconnect sometimes between what people say they want to learn and what they actually end up learning from events. She's looking specifically at the acquisition source, so where the attendee came from, the retention rates, how many times they've attended the events, across the spectrum of it historically. She's looking at engagement across their different channels. So are they opening their emails? Are they responding to direct mail? Are they following Hanley Wood on social channels? Are they attending the show? She's also looking at sentiment in social media channels. Are there a bunch of complainers out there that didn't like a show or didn't like an aspect of the show? Or are there people out there on social media channels saying that Hanley Wood show was the best thing since sliced bread? They look at those things. And then, of course, at the end of the day, she's looking at unmet needs and opportunities so that Hanley Wood can capitalize on those data points. And why I'm putting this in the bucket of big data is because it's huge. When you look at all the Hanley Wood shows, when you look at all the Reed shows, and you look at all the registration data and surveys and evaluations, it's a daunting task to look at all of these things, look at all of these large data sets. And April's only right now using Excel and Access, Microsoft products, and looking at other ways, other tools that might be available coming down the road to look at more data more quickly. But it's a huge thing that can completely revolutionize our industry, and there are people doing it. So, this idea of social discovery. When I went to South by Southwest in March, I was looking around because they were talking about these social discovery mobile apps. So it's basically people able to ping other people. Sometimes they're already friends and they already know who they are, but there are some apps that will ping an absolute stranger based on profiles, based on LinkedIn. And I was walking through the show and someone pinged me, and it's like, John Smith wants to meet you. And I looked at this thing without really being familiar, and it was frankly kind of scary to think that John Smith, who I never really, I don't know, he's not a friend, is pinging me to meet and talk about a particular subject. But it's an interesting concept, and there are several different mobile app platforms doing it outside of our industry. So you've got this thing, and I like the fact that when they reviewed it, they were talking about it as being creepy and awesome. So Banjo is one that pings your friends. So you already sort of have to be in someone's circles. It's using, location technology to detect the fact that your friends are in the same room with you, or some claim it's up to 100 meters within you to know that they're there. And we're seeing, stuff like that with Foursquare, where it's a sort of this location technology where you check in. Here's another one called BeepMo. And this is in Asia right now. It's something that they're comparing to Foursquare, but it uses LinkedIn to be able to identify your other LinkedIn contacts that may be with you in the room. So again, talking about South by Southwest, the two sort of stars and the breakout folks were these social discovery apps, Highlight and Glancy. Now, people were trying them and using them. The big complaint was that they were draining battery life. So you had people that were carrying around extra battery packs and things like that. But a lot of discussion around them. And again, these two apps allow you to locate other friends. And then here's another one, again, using the creepy word. Sonar introduces you to nearby strangers. So you don't have to be in their circles to be able to note other people that are nearby and that want to talk to you, and then you can elect to talk to them, or you can completely ignore it. So it's a pretty interesting thing to be talking about. And although it might seem, in the trade show industry, there's plenty of attendees that don't want to talk to exhibitors anyway, and there's plenty of exhibitors that are really poor at connecting with attendees. So how can we really think about social discovery apps, and why is this important to us? I think we've taken a stab at matchmaking with some success. We have suggestion engines, so there are platforms that allow you to discover as an attendee who would be a good match for you. A to Z does this really well with their technology and their platform. No one has really, however, sort of completely cracked the nut of automating networking and matchmaking. And it seems creepy and weird to think about it, but think of the fact that millennials are putting all of their information out there anyway. This is not a weird thing for them. Our next generation of attendees that is coming in are totally open and frank about what they're doing, what interests them, where they're at a certain moment. So, at a certain point, our industry is going to have to be looking at what they consider is normal for them, and we're going to have to create a new normal. But think about, what if you can make or suggest connections based on topics of mutual interest at a trade show, rather than job titles, rather than names? You can look at people's profiles and be able to ping someone on a topic. I think that would be hugely interesting. What if there were connection suggestions and these discovery apps were placed in the context of a game? People are finding out that game layers on top of trade shows are hugely popular, and what if these discovery apps were used in a game context? It could work then. I think it's also possible that, if this kind of technology works outside the trade show environment, we can find a way to put it into context and get some traction, because that's usually what happens. It becomes well adopted outside of our little, ivory tower, and then the attendees and exhibitors bring it in, and we adapt it. And why would we want to do that? Because connecting with people speaks to the core of the face-to-face experience. And if the value that we bring as trade show organizers to this spectrum, to this continuum of engagement, is the face-to-face experience, then we have to think about ways to automate that for those of us that can't do it without the automation, or that might be intrigued or be accustomed to engaging people in that way. And if we don't accept the automation of connecting, there's something flawed, I think, about the value of face-to-face. So let's sort of look at this third out there trend, social collaboration. And I found there's a really great thing I found on Twitter called Conference Bites. And they just take little sound bites from conferences and they put it out on Twitter. And I found this. I think we're going back to look at this as the age of collaboration and the acceleration of problem solving. And there's a lot of discussion and work going on, especially in nonprofit sectors, about using Internet-based tools to collaborate. And there are folks that are using them. And one huge example recently is the Outdoor Retailer Collective Voice. So I'm here talking to you today from Salt Lake City. We've had Outdoor Retailer has been sort of the gem of Salt Lake City, both the winter outdoor retailer and the summer outdoor retailer. It has really been something that our city's proud about. But now Outdoor Retailer has gotten to a point, at least with the summer show, that they've outgrown the city. They've outgrown our venue. They've got scads of people in a tent outside the Salt Palace. They've got people in hallways. They've got every single meeting room. They've got, wall-to-wall people stacked up, which is a great thing in terms of exhibitors. But it's probably come the time where Outdoor Retailer needs to either figure out a long-term plan, stay in Salt Lake, or move to another city. And what they've done is an amazing thing in that they've put that question, the question of where should we move to, how should we shape our industry going forward, what should our show look like. And they've thrown it out to their community, and they've created a space on the Outdoor Retailer site. It's invitation only. It's called Collective Voice, and they sent out 20,000 invitations to their community, so people that come to their event, exhibitors that exhibit in their event, and even those that don't, that still have a voice in the community, and they invited them to come and have a conversation. And this is what it looked like. So they have this Outdoor Retailer place for stakeholders. They didn't want destinations or the media or people that might have, some vested interest in moving it to one city or another. And they put out 20,000 invitations to discuss this question of where they should relocate to, how the show should grow, what it should look like. They got back several thousand registrants. And right now they have probably about 300 comments, different threads, people addressing different issues. The participants were all given the same data. They were given very detailed data about different venues, about floor plans, about what the particular attributes are of the different cities that they would move to, how that fits in with the community and the culture of Outdoor Retailer. I mean, they gave them a lot of information to make informed decisions. It wasn't just like, here, vote. Here's your 3 things you can vote on. And they really took some time to give them all the information that they need to really have an informed conversation. They've gotten these results. They'll make those results available. They'll come up with a communication strategy, they say, in late 2012, early 2013. And they're going to use this model for the Collective Voice as a model for other decision-making in the future on other Nielsen subjects. And here's what Kenji Haratunian, who sort of is the champion of this, said about Collective Voice, and I just love this. He said when he came into the industry, it was like this secret club. They were making these decisions, with committees or behind closed doors or with the board, not just in Nielsen, but the whole industry as a whole. And he thought that something needed to change, so he took it upon himself to change that model. And this issue came up with Outdoor Retailer. He wanted to position Outdoor Retailer and Nielsen as a partner that's tuned into the micro details of their industry. He wanted them to appear transparent, to show a human face, and put themselves forward as a willing partner. And he told me it hasn't been easy, because within the first 5 minutes, there were people that were completely against moving it. There were people that were completely for moving it. There were people that were chiming in with ideas about where to move it that weren't even on the table and not incredibly feasible. So it's not an easy thing to do what they're doing, but I think that this concept of social collaboration, which is going on outside our industry, is extremely impactful for our industry right now. So I'm going to start talking about the trends within our industry. Obviously, mobile, we knew it was going to be big. I don't know any of us in the technology, our people that we talk about technology with, mostly our online Twitter folks, ever really thought it would be this huge. I didn't. But it has moved now from the point where we're getting these mobile apps. We are using the mobile apps to navigate the event. There's floor plans, there's exhibitor directories, there's session, times, and there's the agenda, and we're using this as sort of a replacement for the paper directory. And we're doing really well in that. We're getting wide adoption. It's for some shows a little bit slower than others, and now there's such a wide range of options in terms of platforms and mobile app providers that it's a wonderful time both to be in the mobile app platform space and to be in the position of selecting these apps, because there's so much to choose from. But we're kind of moving into a new space where the mobile app platforms are growing and beginning to offer different things. So this whole discussion around QR codes, QR codes readers, so those fuzzy little squares of connected weird dots that you start to see everywhere on booths, on brochures, everywhere on the trade show floor. A lot of people thought that, it's just a fad, even though they've been using them for like 20 years in Japan. People weren't getting traction on them. Now it's kind of been a resurgence, and a lot of mobile app developers are rethinking embedding these readers or pointing the users, the mobile app users, to the QR code readers so that they can, we're going back a little. I pressed the wrong button. Okay. We're going to be using QR codes. They're coming back in a big way. The next thing is this concept of SOLOMO, so social, local, and mobile, being able to have functionality on the trade show floor using your mobile phone and being able to communicate socially. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. This idea of placing games, a game layer over your event, and using mobile phones to play games with other attendees, engage exhibitors, and do all those kinds of things. There are several apps completely dedicated and mobile app platforms dedicated to games. Augmented reality, we've been talking about it for a while, this idea that you can take your mobile phone and stand in front of a booth and point at the booth, maybe take a picture of it, and look at other information through the lens of your mobile phone. So it'll serve up local information, maybe something about the exhibitor, facts and figures, whatever it is that the exhibitor wants you to see, but using this augmented reality functionality on your phone to learn more about exhibitors and engage with other attendees. And, of course, interactive floor plans. You don't just see a picture of the floor plan on your mobile device, but you're able to click through and access information about the exhibitors. We're also seeing NFC. I just read that the next iteration of iPhones are probably going to be NFC enabled, and there are others that are coming along where you can do mobile payments and ticketing and registration. And it's crazy that we're not, fully immersed in this right now. You can board a plane just using your mobile phone and having them scan a barcode. So the idea that, and there are extensions of registration platforms that are allowing you to register and things like that. And obviously lead retrieval is another thing, using your mobile phone and mobile device, iPads for. But this whole idea of mobile payments and ticketing and registration is coming on strong. The concept of HTML5, which is the next, sort of version of hypertext markup language, which the mobile app platforms are now able to use. And then the real value of that is, they're saying, even though it's tricky, is that HTML5 will be able to sort of closely simulate the functionality of native apps. So that's a good thing, but still allow you to access the mobile web using HTML5. So the idea that, there will be more detailed analytics available from your mobile platforms. There are some companies doing heat mapping, so you can see what activity is going on the trade show floor. It'll be able to detect where the mobile phones are, using global positioning satellite technology in your phone to locate other contacts. That's kind of the idea of social discovery. And also using Bluetooth, which is already in nearly all smartphones, to access advertising at booths. So there's a lot of stuff going on in mobile that's really, really exciting. And again, it probably adds another layer of anxiety to selecting the right mobile app and platform. But we're going to talk about how you might be able to do that later. So let's look at what's going on in social media, sort of the second prong in the triangle, the vortex in the triangle. There's a lot of people talking about Pinterest. There are actually trade show organizers using Pinterest. Read Exhibitions is one. I saw in Nancy Walsh's PowerPoint that she had a slide on how they use Pinterest for their book expo. So it's something to think about, and it's being discussed a lot. Obviously, the use of video is becoming a bigger discussion than it was before, using video and hoping it'll go viral to promote events. the whole idea of community formation and hiring community managers is becoming much more prevalent in organizations. I was also intrigued by this idea of social kiosks, and there is a company, I'll go back to my previous slide, with these social kiosks. So they're blending the physical world with the social world. So interactive meeting technology has these kiosks, and you can, for one flavor of it, use a wristband or your badge to tap on a kiosk, and it will send your information along with a branded message to your Facebook page. Another way is the photo point station. It sends your photo to Facebook with a branded message. So, hey, I'm here at the South by Southwest conference and having a blast, and here's my picture. And then they have a touch point station where you go and there's a bunch of different options, and you select an option, and it will send your selection to your Facebook page saying, I'm here at such and such booth, and I'm really loving this technology, and I just selected this widget, and it's really cool, and it gets posted to your Facebook page. So I find that sort of use of kiosks really, really interesting and a great use of social media. So we've also got digital media coverage of events. Going to talk about that in 2 slides. And the use of content marketing. It's probably affecting me a little bit more because I follow content marketing very closely, but I'm really starting to see a huge push among trade show organizers, exhibitors, and technology companies that have platforms within the trade show industry using content marketing as ways to promote themselves and their events. So back to this digital media coverage of events. At Infocom, there was a company, rather than have a show daily, a printed publication, they actually had this company called Rave, which is exclusive to the audiovisual community. But Rave they had this team of bloggers and tweeters and folks that were panning out across the trade show floor and live tweeting and blogging and writing about the Infocom show. So they produced this digital publication that you could look at. They had videos, and they were creating podcasts and videocasts and snippets of social media and going out on Twitter live during the show. And then they were covering the show with, videos that they were posting and just on the spot, like, here's your roving reporter talking about exhibits and cool things at Infocom. So we've always had, for quite some time, roving reporters, and we've had digital coverage and sort of the TV channels of this show or that show. But what's now coming around is this idea that you can actually expand your coverage of your event to cover all the different channels, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, and have an army of folks that will come in, these outside people, and actually cover your event for you. And then we were talking about, the idea of content marketing, how to view your event as content and how to get it out there. And that little square that's down there, I actually have that bigger, and I have the link where you can find that. But it's a release. It's hard to read, but about the 6th bar down is in-person events. So in the world of content marketing, in-person events are fairly high up on the sources of where content can come from, along with case studies and newsletters and blogs and articles and social media things. So I think that this whole concept of content marketing is going to continue to be even larger than it is right now within the space of events. So let's talk about virtual events. And when they came out of the gate, we loved them, and then some of us started using them, and we hated them, and then we got back to loving them, and then we started to figure out how to really use them. And so what's happening now among all the platforms is, first of all, this use case expansion. So we're using them differently. We're using them in the ways that make sense virtual events work or don't work, or this particular platform, doesn't work. And we're thinking about the instances where virtual events actually meet our specific objectives. So some of those things might be, internal communications. Maybe you're looking for talent. There are lots of virtual job fairs. Learning, using it for educational, outreach, product launches, partner summits, so channel marketing, and I've even seen it used for press gatherings, press announcements. So we're changing what we use these virtual events for, and in doing that, they're becoming much more useful, and they meet our objectives much more closely than they have in the past. This second thing, the idea that now we can take a virtual event and view it on our mobile device is really, really interesting. It's kind of new, but it's not really new. Probably about 2 years ago, I saw companies that were able to put virtual content out on mobile, but now they're getting really good at it. And there are mobile extensions coming out for virtual platforms that are really interesting and good. And see, when I hit my slide, it goes away. Okay. The next thing is a gaming layer on top of virtual events, not just individual games, not just going into an event and playing Scrabble and trying to engage that way. It's building the entire event with game mechanics. That's something new and very interesting, and people like games, and it's working. It's working in B2B contexts. The next thing is social broadcasting. So it's a new way to use digital events. It's much more focused, not necessarily on a set day and time, but rather on this idea of an always-on broadcast, a channel with a schedule of live and on-demand programming, kind of like television. A really good example of that's coming to our industry is the work that BXB Online is doing. They are creating what they're calling the network. It doesn't have, I don't think, a real name yet. And they're going to associations who have all of this content from their shows, from their internal webinars, all of this stuff. And B2B is working to create the mother of all platforms so that these associations can have essentially something like their own TV channel, and attendees or anyone that's interested in that particular vertical, and particularly those that have never attended an event for that particular vertical or that association, can still have access to the content. So we're using these virtual event platforms in a brand new way. It's not necessarily built around a specific event. It's now being built around a vertical of content. And I urge you to kind of, look for news on that new platform, the network, BXB Online. They're working with InExpo to bring that to life, and I think it's going to be hugely impactful and interesting for our industry. And finally, the last sort of micro trend in virtual events is this idea that the reason that virtual events in the beginning were a little scary and a lot of people put, a lot of effort and time and money into it and maybe didn't get the return on it was that we hadn't figured it out yet. But now a lot of companies are figuring it out. They're monetizing where they can. They're monetizing in the way that makes sense for their organizations. They're monetizing on the content that works for them and their audience, and they're not using a cookie-cutter approach. But they are figuring it out, and people are now working to they're making money on it. They are getting their return on investment. So what's cool is this convergence now of mobile and social and virtual. So you're able to take your mobile device, iPads are great, and interact on social media channels and see the trade show content from virtual extensions on your mobile devices. So it's all kind of coming together, and that's a really good thing for trade show organizers. So, as I said, most of the platforms that came out in sort of the 1.0 and 2.0 versions served up event information. They were essentially event guides, and they came with social functionality already embedded in them because that was so much a part of navigating events. And now we have these virtual platforms that are moving toward having mobile extensions. So what we're seeing is, where we used to have sort of these meetings in a box, this assemblage of different tools that we could put in these categories to be able to experience the trade show, is now going to become meetings on your mobile device. We're going to be able to really use a mobile device as our window into all aspects of the event, both live and virtual. So I think it's hugely exciting. So I want to talk a little bit in the last few minutes about this idea. I only have 2 more slides, how we get our arms around this. And this is really only the very first step. You've got to be looking at it through the lens of your organization's objectives or your event's objectives. Forget about the shiny object. Forget about the functionality and features. If you don't understand what it is that your organization needs to fulfill a particular objective, you don't know what those objectives are, then don't even look at technology, because that's really the first thing to be really certain about. Second of all, you have to know where your organization is having the pain. What is it that you just cannot crack? The formula that you're having problems dealing with, the particular problem that needs a solution. You need to have those firmly outlined before you even begin to look at any flavor of technology. Thirdly, obviously, you can look at all the technology in the world, but if you don't have the budget for it, there's almost no sense in going there. The good news is there's a lot of stuff out there that's free, nearly free, open source, that if you want to just take a small part of your event and experiment a little, you can find tools to match your budget. And then the fourth thing is integration. Huge problem with picking so many different apps and platforms that do different things, and then those platforms don't talk to your attendee management system or your registration system. So if you're going to even go down any road, any option, any alternative for using technology to meet objectives, to solve problems, to be within your budget, if it doesn't integrate with what you've already got, it should be a huge red flag. So finally, I want to thank you all for sort of listening to, some ideas that I have about technology. Obviously, there's so much out there. These are just the things that caught my attention, the things that I think that we should really, really be looking at. I think that technology, it's not the cure for everything, because there's a lot of new problems that have come and have presented themselves from the fact that we're thinking and implementing these different areas of technology. It's only expanded our demand for the tools and the expertise within our organizations. We have now this skyrocketing, absolutely huge demand for Wi-Fi on the trade show floor that, raise of hands from anyone that's been to an event recently where the Wi-Fi was so great. It worked in every room and every space, end to end. Your experience was phenomenal. If I could see you, I probably wouldn't see that many hands. But the fact that it is becoming a huge problem, and now there are, discussions around, is the technology that's in our convention centers adequate enough? Should we be looking to outside vendors and outside resources to build the kind of infrastructure of Wi-Fi, sorry about that we need? And then, obviously, the huge need for strategies around technology, and finally, I mentioned it before, this integration of multiple platforms so that we can all have our platforms talking together. If I could leave you with some final words, what technology means to me is the fact that we now are able to even consider a new set of objectives for trade show organizers. We can now consider event experiences that reflect the new preferences and behaviors of our customers. We can even think about now having frictionless trade shows. We can solve a lot of problems using automation to make it easier for our customers to experience our products. We can look at environments that really and truly capitalize on the unique qualities of the face-to-face experience, and we can recognize that the trade show is only one point on the continuum of engagement with the community. And with that, I will open it up to questions, and I thank you so much for all of your time. So we have got some wonderful questions here, and sort of the first one has to do with mistakes that shows are making in social media right now. Well, that's an interesting question because obviously there's going to be mistakes here and there along the way. It's part of experimenting. It's part of moving forward. It makes me think about something that April Wilson from Hanley Wood said when we kind of talked a little bit about what she was doing, and that is the realization that as trade show organizers, we no longer own the community. We no longer can control the message. Really now the community controls us. So if there is any sort of approach to using social media right now, it is to be cognizant of the fact that what the community wants and says and does is really sort of the rule of law. We can no longer control their preferences and behaviors, and we need to be in a position to use social media channels to offer them opportunities to be successful and to have the information that they need to do their job and not push out a message. Another question on these apps require opt-in by all parties. You have to download and launch the app for people to find you. It's only sort of creepy because you basically raise your hand to be stalked. I think that's true. All of these are opt-out. Everything that I've seen, you don't have to. I mean, if someone calls you on the telephone, do you have to pick up? No. But if you're really in a space where you're open to new conversations and networking with new people, and you had to have already downloaded the app from the App Store in order to even be in the space to, use the app to communicate with other people, that's a fact. So, I mean, if you downloaded the app, you're obviously open to, wanting to communicate in that way. I'm talking about the social discovery idea. So, it really is, it can be a little weird at first, especially in our kind of closed-off industry that we've grown up around. But I think when you look ahead and you think about the audience for these kinds of things, it might not be so weird in about 2, 3, 4 years, maybe months. So I think it's still something we should be thinking about. So RFID is another really interesting technology. It's been around on and off for a really long time, but I really think it's something that right now people should really take another look at. The costs have come way down. RFID is one of those things that it enables you to create this rich database, have these data points that I was talking about earlier, and be able to know what the attendee behaviors and preferences are without, stalking them, without tracking them down, without being able to actually have their badge or their wristband or whatever scanned. The readers will pick up the RFID signal automatically, and you'll know what's going on the trade show floor or in the booth without even, having to connect with your customer, which you do want to do. Plenty of them you'll want to connect with, and plenty of them you'll be able to, go through your whole lead retrieval process with them. But there are plenty that are on the trade show floor that you may miss, especially if you have a really popular booth or a really popular conference session. You won't be able to reach everyone, but you'll at least know who's in the room, and you can dissect that information. You can know job titles, geographically where they're from, and really understand who's consuming your information and who's experiencing your event and how. So I think it's hugely important that we look at that. Okay, more questions. I get a lot of questions about adoption. Both in two things. One is I don't have a community that really is into technology, and what do I do about that? And I beg to differ because, first of all, if you have a community that you're cultivating that doesn't use Facebook, or they don't use LinkedIn or whatever, I love what the people at AMT do with their IMTS show. They have a community that really, by all measures, shouldn't be huge tech heads. So they take it upon themselves to educate them. They have webinars. They have discussions. They put all kinds of signage on the trade show floor. They are on-ramping their own community, their own attendees, their own exhibitors, and that's where, as trade show organizers, you need to be. And adoption takes time. There's no doubt about that. So let's see, the questions. Yeah. If I can make one more point, is the other question I get a lot is, isn't social media a time sucker? And it can be, but what I say is, because it's becoming so predominant, because it's becoming so important to the way that our customers communicate with each other and the way that they wanted us to communicate with them, we have to shift our priorities and our budgets away from the less effective ways that we communicate into the more effective ways, if social media is in fact more effective for your organization. And the only way you're going to know that is by using the data, analyzing who's using social media, how they're using it, when they're using it, and seeing if it's the better channel for you. And if it is, you should be moving your organization into that direction and taking perhaps less emphasis off of the areas that aren't working. So that is all the questions that I see. I am going to finally wrap this up. We've got one more minute to go, and several people asked about whether this presentation was going to be available, and the answer is happily yes. It is going to be available. I would start checking back in a few days, maybe up to a week, at tsnn.com/webinars. And if you have any questions that I haven't answered, feel free to, again, contact me either on Twitter, at Michelle Bruno. You can email me, go to my blog. You can comment there. I'll try to answer. I will answer any questions that you forward. If there is some, sort of burning kind of technology that you really want some advice on or know about, if I can't help you, I will hook you up with someone that can. I'm looking to see that there's more questions that we can answer. Will we have a PDF of these slides? I will get you a PDF, Kathy. I have your email here, so I'll make sure that there's a PDF available. I think that what's posted to TSNN may have a PDF that goes with it, but if not, I'll make sure that you do. And then there's a question about what technology would you say is most useful to a buyer at a merchandise trade show? That one I'm going to think about, Tara, and answer that, for you, because there's a big answer to that question. And then finally, another question on mobile apps benefiting sponsors and exhibitors of trade shows. Obviously, we think about mobile apps in terms of how it enhances productivity for the attendee, but there's a lot of discussion, and there are several different platforms out there that really help bring in increased revenue for organizers from sponsors. They help sponsors. It's a brand new channel for sponsors to get their messages out, and they hugely benefit exhibitors and the platforms. Zarista is one of them. Actually help exhibitors get onto the platform and get the most benefit out of it. So there's some great mobile apps out there. I can talk about that. You can read those on my blog. I have done webinars on that in the past. And again, our time's up. I thank you so much for being with me today, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the blogosphere or on a future webinar. And thank you so much, TSN and